Everybody loves a good success story, and some of the most grueling and inspiring stories come from sports stars themselves. For example, in this video, we're going to talk about the success story of Zion Clark, the MMA fighter who was born without legs, and Joe Rogan's thoughts about the man, as well as AJ McKee's own 2 cents. Anyways, without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting off with the inspiring story of Zion Clark. Zion Clark, otherwise famously known as the MMA fighter born with no legs, made headlines after he won his MMA debut. Clark managed to take down Eugene Murray at the Gladiator Challenge and earned a decision win. For people all over the world, the San Diego fighter is definitely an inspiration for many, and he's competed in multiple sports. In fact, Clark already holds the Guinness World Record as the fastest person to ever walk on their hands. And that's not it. He also holds the world record for the highest box jump using just hands, that is 33 inches, and the most diamond push-ups ever, which is 248 in under 3 minutes. Plus, to add to his already extensive list of incredible accomplishments, Clark is currently an MMA fighter who fights and knocks out normal, able-bodied people. Now, despite Zion Clark's rare disorder, he's managed to become an amazing high school wrestler, and he even plays the drums, skateboards, and even climbs. Not to mention, he worked really hard to become an MMA athlete, and after a successful debut, he now hopes to join MMA's biggest promotion, the UFC, one day. Next up, Joe Rogan's analysis of Zion Clark's fighting technique. Joe Rogan recently shared that he was really awed at the incredible achievement of Zion Clark, the disabled MMA fighter who won his debut fight. The 25-year-old was actually born with a really rare birth disorder that negatively affected the growth and development of his entire lower body and resulted in him having to grow without any legs. Now, after Clark recently took down Eugene Murray through unanimous decision at the Gladiator Challenge, Seasons Beatings event, the famous podcaster and UFC color commentator Joe Rogan shared that he was really impressed with what he saw. The 55-year-old recently applauded Clark's inspiring journey in the world of MMA, while attempting to analyze at the same time how his opponents could possibly beat him. The podcaster pointed out that Clark's disability actually benefits him by making it completely impossible for his opponents to try controlling his legs. That's a really interesting and valid observation. Speaking on the latest episode of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast with Brian Simpson, the commentator took a few moments to scrutinize Zion Clark's unique fighting abilities. In his own words, nothing but props for the guy. In the commentator's opinion, it was incredible that Clark made his journey from elite wrestler to MMA fighter, but he noted that his game was completely different because he didn't have any legs to control or get controlled, which is a good thing in Rogan's opinion. For example, Joe pointed out, if you're punching a guy that's down like that, you have to bend your knees and try punching down. How do you train for that guy? Coming up, Joe Rogan heaps praises on Zion Clark. Clark started his journey as a wrestler before deciding to test the waters inside the cage. He's definitely caught the eye of the masses in the process, and that includes the famous commentator Joe Rogan himself too. He recently opened up about Zion's work ethic and some of the positives to his game. For example, Rogan can't believe that the MMA fighter closes the distance so fast with no legs. In his opinion, it's really amazing. Joe Rogan also pointed out that Zion's upper body is insanely strong for someone of that weight class. Now, Clark will compete at bantamweight, with his first fight having gone down earlier this month at the Gladiator Challenge. Following up, a tough road ahead. Even though Zion Clark definitely impressed everyone during his debut in the Gladiator Challenge, and although it looks like a lot of people are rooting for him to get the success that he very well deserves, it looks like not everyone is on his side. In fact, Clark's first pro fight has actually been called into question, with some people even believing that it was a mismatch. Zion Clark picked up the unanimous decision win over Eugene Murray, who went into the fight with a 0-4 record as an experienced professional. Now, while Clark has proceeded to take part in a lot of interviews documenting his experience up until now, and while this is definitely something unique to see in the MMA world, Rogan, as well as a lot of others, is probably aware of the fact that it's pretty unlikely that he'll manage to make it all the way to the coveted UFC, but we can still hope and believe in him that he beats the odds and makes it. Still, the truth is that Zion Clark doesn't really even need to do this to be considered a success. He's already considered one, and he's achieved a whole lot more than most of his critics ever will in their entire lives. Now for what happened to Zion Clark's legs. Zion Clark was born with a very rare birth disorder called caudal regression syndrome, which impairs the development of the lower spine of an individual. Unfortunately for Zion, that meant he was born without any legs. According to the statistics, about 1 in every 100,000 children suffer from this rare disorder, and this is exactly how Zion ended up in foster care. In fact, he spent 16 years of his life in foster care, going through the system and facing a lot of issues in the process. But that never let him down or stopped him, and through consistent hard work, Clark managed to fulfill his lifelong dream of becoming an athlete. Now, Clark has become an exceptional athlete in many different fields, and he hopes to continue making history. According to the athlete, he lives by the mantra, no excuses, and even though he doesn't have a full body, he still constantly pushes himself to achieve the impossible. Moving on, AJ McKee compares Zion Clark's upper body strength to UFC champion. AJ McKee, the former Bellator featherweight champion, feels that his teammate Zion Clark is a physical freak of nature even though he doesn't have any legs. Clark trains alongside McKee and his team as he works to round out his fighting toolbox. So far, he's made a pretty big impression on McKee and others at the gym, particularly with his upper body strength. In a recent interview with Shaquille Majuri of CBS Sports, McKee praised Clark's strength despite his obvious physical limitations. He started off by saying that he knows that a lot of people have judged the fighter based on his experience. That is, if he doesn't have any legs, then he probably can't fight. But there's something that a lot of people are missing out on here. Zion Clark has been wrestling since he was a child. Not to mention, Zion's wrestling college level too, so he definitely isn't a beginner at wrestling. He's been in it. Now, in AJ McKee's own words, to implement a little bit of striking and to just show him where he's at different angles, opening his front headlock game and then fighting a guy that's 125 pounds, the man has the upper torso of a Francis Ngannou. So, in McKee's opinion, Zion Clark is easily a 220-pounder. The man is huge after all, even without any legs. Again, to quote McKee's own words, and anybody who is 125 pounds, when he grabs them, it's unreal. Up next, more on McKee's endorsement of Zion Clark. Now, McKee's trained alongside Clark, so he shared his own experience about that too. In the interview, McKee revealed that although he was a 155-pounder, still, he went neck and neck with him in the grip. Still, the wrestler noted that he had his father's McKee strength, so he went on to compare that to when Clark wrestled with other guys at the gym. Apparently, his wrist control is phenomenal. In McKee's opinion, if Zion Clark keeps on doing what he's good at, he's definitely going to keep on shocking the world with his sheer talent. Anyways, just like the man AJ McKee compared him to, the UFC heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou, Clark has his eyes on a world title. As like mentioned before, Clark also had a pretty tough upbringing, which led him to having to go through multiple foster care systems, as well as other childhood obstacles. A lot of other MMA stars, such as the former UFC 2-weight world champion Conor McGregor, have also kept a pretty close eye on Zion Clark's rise. In the meantime, McKee will be returning to the action this weekend at the Bellator vs. Rizin cross-promotional event. He won his lightweight debut earlier this year in 2022 against Spike Carlyle. McKee's glowing endorsement of Clark is definitely profound, and there's hardly any doubt that the wrestler will continue to crush barriers and prove that some of us can make the impossible look like ordinary, everyday things. Finally, did Zion Clark go to the Olympics? Zion Clark started out his combat sports journey pretty early on in his life, way back in elementary school. He faced a lot of hardships along his journey and was constantly mocked for not having any legs. But instead of the taunts getting him down, Clark used all the hate to fuel his motivation and trained rigorously to become an incredible wrestler. After graduating from high school, Clark joined Kent State and spent the next 2 years of his life training, eventually becoming the first American athlete to ever compete in both the Paralympic Games and Tokyo Olympics Games back in 2020. After making the decision to become an MMA athlete, Clark made a tweet and tagged the UFC president Dana White in it. He wanted to join the promotion while mentioning that Hasbulla, the popular star in the MMA community, has a contract with the UFC. Now, Clark trains with Olympic and world champion Jordan Burroughs and 3-time NCAA titleist Joey Davis. Not to mention, he's also trained with the likes of UFC legends such as Rampage Jackson, Mike Pretty, and Anderson Silva. And that's a wrap for this video. Do you think Zion Clark will be able to make it to the UFC? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.